Lisa, maybe it's better to give up on this house. A few days after getting married and moving into our new home, I invited my beloved niece and her mother, my sister. Then my niece made a rather ominous remark. Hey, don't start telling ghost stories out of the blue, kiddo. My husband, either out of fear or simply taking the child's words too seriously, began to freak out. But there was another reason for his fear. I'm Lisa, a 30-year-old pharmacist. I often take care of my niece who lives nearby, and she's grown incredibly fond of me. I adore and spoil her too. Every time her mother, my sister, comes to pick her up, she reminds me, "You're spoiling her too much." Of course, whenever she leaves her with me, she says, "I've told you before, you can just spoil a child in upbringing." But I joke it off, saying parenting is a mother's duty. That's my everyday life. My sister, a nurse, has a hectic schedule. She works in a well-paying inpatient ward, often taking night shifts. As a pharmacist in a drugstore, I have fixed working hours and no night shifts. Days without outpatient services are my off days, and I'm never suddenly called in due to staff shortages. So, being nearby, I often end up taking care of my niece when my sister's busy. My niece, perhaps understanding her situation, is more mature and understanding than other 5-year-olds. They say girls mature faster than boys, but I think it's mostly due to her home environment. I've been so attentive to not make her feel lonely that she's become completely smitten with me. She's a quiet and easygoing child but possesses an ability that's hard for ordinary people to understand. For instance, we might have a conversation like, "The park was empty today. Time flew by. Maybe we should take a shortcut home? Lisa, we shouldn't go that way. There's something bad there. Let's take a longer route." Wait, something bad? I've heard that children are more perceptive, able to sense things adults can't see or hear. But really, honestly, I'm half skeptical about it. Then, one day at the pharmacy, a regular male customer asked me out for lunch. You might think a regular at a pharmacy has health issues, but that's not necessarily the case. This man was recovering from a work-related injury and was otherwise healthy. We started making smart talk as he came in frequently at first. As his injury healed and his visits became less frequent, he asked me out for lunch right around the time we thought he wouldn't need to come back. After a few lunches, he invited me to dinner at a chic bar, and as we drank, I began to open up about myself. Crossing the line seemed only a matter of time. Then, he proposed passionately. "I can imagine life without Lisa. Let's get married right away." Such words were enough to thrill me. Feeling needed by someone, I couldn't find a reason to refuse, and I accepted his proposal as if drawn by a magnet. He then joyfully lifted me up, not caring about the public eye, showing a charming side of him. He even suggested we have a wedding right away, just the two of us. He had connections in the bridal industry, promising priority treatment. Although it was tempting, I declined, wanting to be blessed by my loved ones. He looked so disappointed, it hurt my heart. Still, I couldn't give up on having others celebrate with us, so I stood my ground. He respected my feelings and backed down surprisingly easily, which made me like him even more. The next day, which felt like the luckiest of my life, I caught my sister before she left for work and shared the news of my engagement. Seeing her joy as if it were her own confirmed my decision to not rush into a wedding. While lost in yesterday's memories, I got a call from him. I knew he had a sister from our early dating days, but I never knew she was hospitalized with an illness. When I asked why he hadn't mentioned it earlier, he said he didn't want me to accept his proposal out of pity, and the reverse could be true too. I assured him that I wouldn't accept or reject him based on his sister's illness, and he gently acknowledged, keeping my heart in a constant flutter. Yet, I still retained my rationality where needed. He showed me a photo of his sister and told me, "She says she can't wait for the day she can call you big sister after hearing about Lisa. I want to fulfill her wish as soon as possible." When he held my hand, saying we should become a family soon, I almost got swept away. But I don't mind being called a sister by his sister, even if we don't marry. I asked if we could visit her in the hospital instead of getting married right away. But he said, shortly after meeting me, her condition worsened and now it's no visitors allowed. "Should you be here with me?" I asked. He pulled out an amulet from his coat pocket, saying all he could do was pray. I stopped by before seeing Lisa. All I can do is pray to God. Damn it. Watching him overflow with helpless emotions, I deeply felt the desire to be by his side and support him. Then, his messages suddenly stopped the next day. His sister must be in a bad state. I just hope he's not pushing himself too hard. After about 3 days, he showed up at the pharmacy, cheerful as usual. He said he wanted to see my face, though a message would have sufficed. Just hearing that was enough for me. We planned to meet after finishing work. As I headed to the designated spot at the agreed time, he was there, waiting. As I had thought, he explained his sister's condition had worsened, and he had to be with her constantly. She was still not allowed visitors, but he assured me she was stable. I was relieved. He then handed me a letter from his sister. I must have looked surprised. He explained she must have written it without him knowing. He bashfully confessed, "Actually, I've had a crush on you for a while." It seemed he had talked about me even before we started dating. The letter was full of her dreams of us dating, getting married, becoming a family, wondering if she could be a flower girl. Despite her illness, she only thought of us, bringing me to tears. "Let's get married soon." I said it with conviction. His sister's participation seemed unlikely, but I wanted to show her the big day of her beloved brother. I persisted and found out the name of the hospital she was in. There was a wedding venue nearby. It was visible from her hospital room or the rooftop, albeit barely, but it felt like she'd be with us. I pleaded for that venue. He was thrilled that I considered his sister so much, and we quickly set a date. We couldn't be choosy about the date. A less auspicious day was cheaper and had an opening, so we went for it. In the midst of hasty preparations, he made a request. He wanted to delay our legal marriage registration. His sister's condition had worsened again, and she needed urgent surgery. It was costlier than expected, and even our wedding expenses were at risk. "What about holding the wedding after her surgery?" I suggested, but he replied, if she knew our wedding was postponed because of her, she'd feel guilty and it might hinder her recovery. I couldn't argue with that, so we decided to proceed as planned. I paid for the wedding up front, and we agreed to split the cost after his sister's surgery expenses were settled. Despite this hiddenness, many dear ones attended the wedding. My sister, understanding it was an important day, managed to get the day off with the help of her nurse colleagues. My adorable niece dressed up but quickly hid behind people, not used to many adult men around. Her shyness was so cute. I couldn't help but smile. After the wedding, I moved into our new home. It was too big for him alone, and he suggested I move in. With the unexpected medical expenses, setting up a new home would be costly. I was prepared to support for a while, but for how long was uncertain. So, it was decided I'd move into his place. My sister, though understanding, was still worried. Perhaps a new home would have been better. I invited her and my niece over. He, now my husband, was excited about the idea. My sister checked out the house as soon as she arrived, her concern evident. "Hey, that's pretty rude, sis. 32 and a president of an import company. That must be lucrative. Are you reassured now?" "Yes, I guess." My husband and I both sighed in relief. But since I moved here, it became harder to babysit and take care of my 5-year-old niece frequently. The distance is too great for her to travel alone. Besides, I wanted to spend time nursing my husband's sister. Then, out of the blue, my niece said something profound. "Lisa, you should leave this house." Because another woman is already playing here. "Hey, there are things even a child shouldn't say." He scolded, furious at my sister for her parenting. "Can you see them?" I asked. When my niece nodded, my husband's anger melted into fear. "My niece is a bit sensitive. Maybe you're not comfortable with that kind of stuff?" No, it's not that. Just don't start with ghost stories out of nowhere." "It's not a ghost story. She's someone your brother knows well. Long gold hair, always tied back, narrow eyes, a bit heavy, with a mole near her eyes." He turned pale. It was more than fear. Something else seemed to be bothering him. The clincher was my niece's next comment. "What's your real name, uncle? You use so many. Have you forgotten?" He shouted, trembling. "Shut up, brat. Don't talk nonsense. Hey, don't take it out on the kid just because you're upset. Shut up." He pushed me away. It wasn't just panic. My niece's odd comments usually turn out to be true. The drastic change in my usually kind husband raised suspicions. I whispered to my sister to check his back. In the meantime, I decided to play along to distract him. "I'm sorry." My niece said something rude. As long as you understand." What a way to ruin a day off." He glared at my niece, who coolly turned away. "Right, you have a long business trip starting tomorrow." I placated him, and his anger seemed to ebb, talking about what souvenir he should bring. But the conversation didn't go far. The name on the license my sister found in his bag was unknown to me, and there were several cell phones in his bag. Lisa, he might be a dangerous guy. Are these burner phones? Like the ones used in scams, those? Yes. Registered under fake or other people's names. Illegal stuff. So what? Thanks to that, Lisa got to enjoy lavish dates and meals, right? He seemed to imply I was complicit. That's nonsense. My sister isn't like you scumbag. He's being wrapped up by a woman. She says she'll never let go. Don't spout nonsense, you brat. I'm not fooled anymore. His fear was overtaken by defiance, sensing his true nature was being exposed. But he didn't run, probably confident he wouldn't be caught. He seemed almost too calm, considering his predicament. Then the police burst in, shouting, "Police," and surrounded him. My sister had already discovered the license before she told me. She had called the police before informing me, and the entire conversation had been heard by them. Multiple women had filed complaints against him. He matched the description they had. The police wanted to catch him red-handed. My sister wanted to keep me safe and not let him escape. Their interests aligned in a miraculous arrest. He wasn't my husband, just a man, as I watched him being firmly escorted away. In the police interrogation, he either gave up or calculated that confessing would lighten his sentence. He talked easily. He had planned to defraud me for money, probably under the guise of his non-existent sister's surgery expenses. Furthermore, the man had previously gotten into an argument with a woman he was dating, and the confrontation tragically led to her passing away. The argument was over his true identity being exposed, and the woman threatening to go to the police. But why he confessed to this was baffling, especially since he seemed skeptical yet scared of what my niece had said. The police provided this information. The night he was taken away, he woke up in a holding cell, struggling and finding long hair tangled around his neck. Believing he was cursed, he confessed. When asked if the hair was real, the response was a laugh. Of course not. He also insisted that there were finger marks on his neck, visible only to him. Sometimes those who have committed such acts break under the weight of guilt and escape into delusion, the police said. But recalling the image of the woman my niece described sent shivers down my spine. Further investigation led to the discovery of the woman's skeletal remains in the mountains, as per the man's confession. Her photo was released in the news, matching exactly what my niece had described. My sister and I were once again struck with fear. The man's fraud case also made the news, and more victims began to come forward. It seemed his list of crimes would only grow. He was now behind bars for a very serious crime, haunted every day by the spirit of the woman he had wronged. I was appalled at my own lack of judgment for once considering marriage with such a man. After the trial for the fraud case I was involved in concluded, I was free from it all. But marriage was the last thing on my mind. I moved back near my sister's house and continued to take care of my niece. Today, after dropping her off at my sister's house, I opened up about my reluctance towards marriage and romance. You say that now, my sister said, but love can happen anywhere, anytime. Like, maybe you'll fall in love with someone right after leaving here. Her words were not taken seriously. As time passed and summer arrived, it was my duty to take my niece to the annual community summer festival. This year, as we walked hand in hand in her new summer dress, I noticed a man drop his wallet. I picked it up and tried calling out to him, but he couldn't hear me over the noise. Lifting my niece, I hurried to catch up to him and return his lost wallet. He was grateful and insisted on treating us to something as a thank you. We hit it off and ended up enjoying the festival together. You're lucky, Lisa. You've been connected to that man since before you were born. Wait, what are you saying? Oh my. As I blushed, he turned red too. Love can be found anywhere, just like my sister said. As fireworks lit up the night sky, I felt the stirrings of a new romance.